Hi, a very happy evening. We are just waiting for everyone to log in. We'll give them some time. Thank you. I can actually see a lot of people logging in. Yeah, just we'll give another 2 minutes to everyone to log in. So we will start by 6:02. Thank you so much. We'll just take 1 more minute. We'll just give everyone time to log in. I think it's 6:02. We can start now. So a very happy evening and a warm welcome to all my clients. I can see my clients, their friends, my friends and my colleagues who have logged in. Thank you so much for your time. And this is going to be one of the most interesting sessions. Actually, when Dr. Punita shared with me about the topic, making of a food forest, I asked her, what is it exactly? And then I said, let me do some Google search. I went through some YouTube links. And then this is what I found. So, which is very amazing, you know, you can actually convert your garden, you can mimic it to a real forest. Well, what is a forest? A forest is an ecosystem which is full of diversity of plants, animals, fungi, and they all are interdependent, and there is absolute harmony and balance that is being maintained. So I'm sure this, we all are looking forward to hear from Dr. Taral and Dr. Punita. Yeah, so before I introduce my speaker, I'll just take a minute to introduce myself and my company. I'm Meena Sriram. I'm a financial coach and associate director with an MFA, and I'm there with the firm for the last 12 years. The company is a 15-year-old company, and we play the role of a financial coach in our clients' life, where we help them achieve their dreams, passion, and the financial goals that they have set for themselves. Actually, In Pursuit of Happiness series is nothing but an output of all these conversations that we have had with our clients. Well, to say this company was founded by Amar in the year 2005. And Amar was a one-man army with a vision of doing the right thing for the clients. And I think this team was built by all the passionate people who joined in, who believed in Amar's vision of doing what is right for the client, taking care of our clients' money the way we would take care of our parents' money and our best friends' money. Actually, that's the vision of our company. We are happy to say that 4 years back, we started our own fintech company, Happiness Factory, which helps everyone track their goals online. This helps people lead a happier financial life. And as a firm, we specialize in these four segments: the doctor segment, the corporate executive segment, the business owners, and the celebrities. Actually, in the last 2-3 years, a lot of work has happened where we have specialized in helping families of children with special need. We help a lot of retirees as such, and we have conducted a lot of financial literacy programs, done a lot of awareness for women who want to be independent. Well, this is about us, and let's introduce our speaker, Dr. Taral Nagra and Dr. Punita. I would say this is such a lovely pic. When I saw the pic, it actually brought that smile on my face. Very happy, very lovely pic. I think for all the doctors, they know Dr. Taral and Dr. Punita very well. They don't need an introduction, but for all the others, let me introduce. So Dr. Taral is one of the best pediatric orthopedic surgeons in the country. He's from the KEIM Hospital in GS Medical College. These are the hospital where he practices: Hinduja Hospital, Saifi, Jupiter, SRC Children Hospital. He's also the director of Jupiter Gate Lab and Cerebral Palsy Clinic. He's a trustee of Muskan Charitable Trust. Actually, he's also the webmaster of Pediatric Orthopedic Society of India. And Dr. Punita is a radiologist, and she's from the Grant Medical College and Sir JJ Group of Hospitals. She is an Iyengar yoga practitioner, and they are blessed with two wonderful sons, Param and Ansh, who is currently studying in US. Yeah, so I hand over the presentation to Dr. Taral and Dr. Punita. And in the morning, we were chatting and we were discussing, and we said we are going to have super fun. This is something people, I think when I saw the number of registration, which crossed, 200 plus, and I said, wow, people want to know what is all about sustainable living. So over to you. Thank you so much for taking out time. Thank you so much for accepting to be a part of this webinar. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think you have to unmute yourself, Dr. Taral.
So hi, can you unshare your slide? Then we can start.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm just stopping. Yeah.
Okay, to start with, what we are going to do is something very simple. And we'll start with a game. And this game you can access if you go to your chat box. There is a link over there. I want all of you to click that link. And when you click that link, it takes you to what is known as Mentimeter. And what you're going to do there is, type 3 words. When you think of happiness, what words come to your mind? And once you've typed your word, don't forget to come back to Zoom.
Dr. Taral, you can speak a bit louder.
Yeah, I can speak a bit louder.
Yeah, your voice is a bit, yeah.
All right, so we can see these words. I hope people can see these words. Freedom,
yeah.
Smile, music, peace. Somebody say neighbor. No, sorry. Health, nature.
What is
freedom? Gooby.
What is Gooby?
Manisha Koirala. No, sorry. Fulfillment, holidays, memories with friends, fun moments. Super. Success, yeah, that's somebody's idea of happiness.
Health and peace. I think we are vying for the first place.
Yeah.
Peace goes in the top.
So much love and relationship.
I don't see it. I don't see it anywhere.
And time with kids. Okay.
I don't believe this. No one has written love.
Yeah, somebody has written love. Super. Yeah, we're
Wow.
going to close that in around 30 seconds. So,
Keep
wildlife,
coming, yes.
wildlife, music, greenery, all right.
Nice.
Security,
Content.
all right.
Eternal and helping people. That's nice. Helping people.
Okay, so this is all about in pursuit of happiness, and let's look today, where we are, and let's start with a presentation on this in this series of in pursuit of happiness.
So yeah, welcome everyone. We have very grandiosely labeled and titled this talk as Makings of a Food Forest. And as Meena rightly said, looking at the number of registrations, I am wondering really what am I doing over here? I don't know if we are going to do justice to this, to the title, Makings of a Food Forest, but let's go along the journey and we'll continue and see what happens.
So this is Gateway to Happiness. Actually, this was the door which we made to our house. And you can see this was a beautiful piece of land. And you get up in the morning and this was the whole idea. You open the doors and you see happiness all around. And we know that what is everybody's ideas of happiness. These are completely different. And we want to put a disclaimer here, though we are, talking on behalf of a finance company. When Meena speaks about compounding interest, we are talking about composting. So there is a difference. When MFA talks about making you rich, we are talking about enriching the soil. Okay. So this talk is not about MFA, but it is about a completely different topic. And Meena, you always talk about, you and Mehul talk about investment, but we are going to talk about enhancement. So, this is a disclaimer today, about what we are going to talk about. And this place we are going to talk about, in pursuit of happiness, the place we are going to talk about, this village is known as Zarwad. It's almost 181 kilometers from where we live, from Wadala to Zarwad, 181 kilometers, and it takes good 3 hours to reach there. And as you see here, this village is blessed because it's a junction of 2 lakes, Upper Vaitarna Lake and the another lake, Arwan Lake. And this is the entry to the village. You see a school behind, which has been now recently painted. And this village, almost lives in 19th century. People still don't have satellite antennas, and there are buffaloes and cows and ships, and people are doing farming. And there is pretty much no other business which happens. So whenever we've spoken to people about this place, the first question which we are always asked, and this was majority of the question, Punita, people have asked us, is how did you land here? There was a Maharashtrian friend of mine who says he kasi bhetli, as if I was, getting a girlfriend. And a Guju friend would ask me ki ketla ma padi, so everyone has different perspectives of how you got this piece of land. And I'll tell you a small story. This is me and Param and Ansh, and we had lots of holidays in greens and nature. From the time our kids were born, and every 6 months or a year we would take these holidays. And this is the person who sort of inspired us, Himanshu Prem. And with him, when Ansh was just 1.5 years old, we went to Kotis and stayed in tents, and he introduced us to what is nature. He and Geeta Ben Jain were the people who introduced us to the Himalayas. Over a period of time, we had a group of friends, and you see this group, which is now known as Vaitarna Group. It has completely, the name nomenclature of this group has changed. Close friends, which are parents of our kids, of friends of our kids. And you see there Rajiv, who almost told us that if you want to know what you're eating, you need to grow it yourself. So that was one more incentive to start becoming a farmer from being doctors. And lastly, I want to share a story with you. This is Punita, and this is our first wedding anniversary. So this was almost 26 years from today. We are at Mathiran, and I asked her, what gift do you want for your anniversary? And she told me gift an island. So Zarwad was a place, and how I landed up here, I will tell you that people give credit to parents and wife and family and friends. I'm a surgeon. I want to give credit to my anesthetist and my patients. So I hope Dilip is here. Dilip Chavan is my anesthetist, pediatric anesthetist at Jupiter Hospital. His father, showed me that there was a place near a dam, and there is a patient I knew. He said, "Amcha gavat kevatari ya," and he took me to this village, which looked like that. Actually an island with trees, the dam on 2 sides, and then I said, let me give this property, this piece of land for having peace of mind to Punita. And what did it look like? You would imagine that this would be a green place full of trees and fruits and vegetables. But actually, when we got the place, this is what it looked like. This was the gift to Punita. Punita, what was your reaction when you saw this place?
So very frankly, I asked you, I said, let's turn back and go back home right now. I'm not traveling 3 hours to come to this. This is what I told you.
And I call this as, one tree farm. So this is Punita and Dr. Dina Dedia. They are sitting here and they are wondering what the hell, both of them knew I'm a crazy fellow. What the hell I bought this for, There is just one tree, there is no life in this soil. And what are we going to do with this land? And here you see two in-laws, my mother-in-law and Punita's mother-in-law, essentially my mom and her mom. When we got them to show this place, you can see expressions on their face. By the way, I want to say you, in pursuit of happiness, all the husbands who are here, if you can manage to keep your mother-in-law happy, then that's the pursuit of happiness. But she is not very happy, and there is no roof, nothing to rest here. And we say, let's create a place to stay, and this was the foundation. And then I started making some drawings. And, I said, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. We consulted some architects, but somehow their ideas of a house here did not gel with our idea. We started looking at how people were living, how they were constructing houses for last 500 years. And then we came to this idea, you can see Punita in middle, working with the women of the village, something which was traditional yet modern, 25% modern, and 75% traditional, as this picture shows. And then we started building. And as an orthopedic surgeon, I was expert at pre-operative planning. So I started planning. I started using my little geometry knowledge. Like I know that there were many lost nerves during my school and college life, but math was my lost nerve, and geometry. And I started measuring, drawing triangles, making circles, and making a design. Punita wanted this house to be eco-friendly, so we did not use much of cement. So this was a mud and brick house, and all of us, would travel early in the morning. I really don't know what Punita is thinking here. She has some dream in her eyes. Probably she's thinking, what will I do once this house gets over, and how I'm going to green myself. But if you see, as we were developing this whole house, this is the roof made up of tree roof, where the bamboo roof, and then the kavlas are going to come, and it's going to be a house which is breathable. And I want to tell you that this house does not have a single air conditioner. One of you who are planning to visit this house, there is no AC, there is no single fan. Okay, so it is this roof which keeps this house closed, and there are very subtle systems of ventilation. And we had these bottles. This was an idea that you keep air-filled bottles in the wall. So these bottles, because they're filled with air, will insulate this house, but get light inside. So we had lots of these bottles which got lights inside, made it look very good, and insulated the house and kept it cool. And this was all done with mud. And this was, we got few bottles, and then we got a few more bottles. This is our bathroom exterior. And our, villagers were wondering, what is this guy up to? How much he must be drinking to have all these bottles around here, so this was a complete Desi house with Videshi bottles. And this is how our bathroom looked from inside. So it got lots of lights. One time there was a worker, he grudgingly asked me, doctor, tumi nemi khali batle anta, ek vela tari bharleli ana. So finally, this is how this house developed. You can see that there are lots of mix and matches. There are some architect friends on this webinar, and I want to apologize to them. I don't want to encourage them to become orthopedic surgeon. Just because a surgeon can become an architect should not venture into doing surgeries. But there were mix and match, which came from our travels. So we visited Laurie Baker's houses in Kerala when we went, for a honeymoon to Kerala. And then that memory was still there, and we tried to build something like that. And behind you can see that there is something called earthship construct. You can see tires over there. And this was a concept called thermal mass, which keeps this house cool during the daytime. And in cold nights of Zarwad, it gives us warmth. So this was about the house. And then I hand over to Punita to talk to us about the forest. How did it develop?
Yeah, so hi, welcome once again. That was a very brief and good talk for the house. So the picture you see over here is a very iconic picture for us. We love it very much. But if you look closely, you will see that this entire land is filled just with grasses. Very pretty tall grass and what I would loosely call as a grasslands. Now, if you look at the ecological succession of forests, grasslands are on one end of the spectrum. Ecological succession is the process by which the structure of any biological community evolves over time. So this is what we had come with. And this was 2012 Diwali when we purchased the land, and just for a shagun, we planted 5 trees with our children over there. Around this time, for a couple of years, I was visiting Urban Leaves. Urban Leaves is it's the urban community farm in Mumbai, in Bombay. And at that time, we used to visit Mahim Nature Park, and this is a rooftop terrace where we would grow food in these containers. So the raised beds are made of any used lying around bricks or stones which are there. And the soil was indigenous. It was built and made over there. There's not a single Urban Leaves do not use ready-made soil. They all build their soil by a process called Amrit Mitti, which takes around 3 to 4 months for the mitti to form. But you can see the harvest is an absolutely wonderful harvest. Look at, there's so much there's abundance here. And that by the side is Darshana Shah, our friend. And I was very happy to see someone who I knew over there coming along with me. So I tried to recreate, because our soil was so poor and pathetic, I tried to recreate this Amrit Mitti at our farm. And trust me, it was a pain. Because every time, there was nothing on our land except for grass. And every time we traveled from Mumbai, we would carry sackfuls of leaf litter. Maybe from the Mumbai municipality, the Kachrawala in the morning, I used to ask him to pack up the sacks in the Goonies. Or on the way, if there were any forests, he would fill it up. But do what I do, whatever we did, we never had any much success. It would never become the rich, black, humusy soil which we saw at Urban Leaves, which we used to participate in. And I had to give up this dream that we see here at the Don Bosco rooftop. These are all rooftop gardens which Urban Leaves does. And I believe many of you have questions about can we farm and can we garden in urban? And this is the answer. Yes, in urban spaces you can. And look at the bounty of the harvest. And I was pretty dejected. A couple of years I kept going on Sundays to volunteer. I realized this is not what I am not going to be able to do this. And that was sad. So we were resigned to having what we had, and this is the first monsoon in 2013 when we planted a few saplings of fruit trees, and you can see the soil over there, very undegraded, unhumusy soil, which we call it, no organic matter, absolutely sandy soil. This is not going to retain any water whatsoever. The moment you water it, it will all drain down, and it's going to be very difficult to build something on this soil.
Punita, I just want to say that it's important that, like children, plants get nourishment and care right from beginning. And I can see that these plants which we had planted in 2013 have not really grown that well. Though they have grown, but not that well.
Yeah, but it's okay. I would beg to differ. I'm pretty okay with whatever has happened because I feel everything is a learning process and I'm in no rush and hurry. We give it love if we couldn't give it anything else.
Right.
So the whole idea about growing food was that, as Taral said in the talks with Raji, if you want to eat good food, real food, chemical-free food, it's food which you should grow. Which meant that under no ways was I going to get any chemicals into my place. And that's why we just kept going on. And then this was the monsoon of 2014.
So like true Gujjus, food was our inspiration, nothing else.
No. Yeah. So all my pictures are going to be in perspective. I'm going to put it in perspective. So they're all going to be around monsoon pictures, maybe May, June, July. So this is how it looked in 2014 with a few, with a few, I don't know if you can see, but banana and papaya trees and some lemongrass growing, that's about it. Now, when you have no sense of direction, I believe Providence intervenes. It always does. Can you move to the next slide? And I got this gift, then another gift from Jyoti. Jyoti Deshpande is my neighbor and now a very good friend. And she gifted me this Gaia's Garden, which is a book on permaculture. She met me in a World Garden, Kitchen Garden Day. And she was surprised to know that I'm interested in the business of growing food. And so she asked me to take a look at this book, which is about permaculture. And at that time, I put up a quote on this book. And I'll read out this quote to you by Steve Jobs. It says that, remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. There is no reason not to follow your heart. It was a difficult subject. It was something new. I was practicing radiology and this was completely new for me. But yet I sat with the books, opened it, and then got so hooked that I went on the internet. Internet, as you know, the www has everything. So it spoke about permaculture. Permaculture is actually two words contracted together, permanent and agriculture, to form one word called permaculture. It talks about, it's a design process basically, in which we observe and try and mimic nature. And we try to build ecosystems which are present in nature in real life. So, and it's called permanent agriculture, permaculture, because just like forests, where if you go to a forest and if you watch a forest, there is nobody tending to a forest. Unlike a farm or unlike a garden, where you have to constantly intervene, constantly keep working to have that farm flourish. The forest, nobody flourishes, nobody waters the forest, nobody waters it, nobody fertilizes it, nobody composts it, nobody prunes it, nobody nothings it, and yet it flourishes. So it's a permanent system where you don't need inputs, where if the inputs are not there, where we don't put inputs, it's not going to collapse. That's why it's called as permaculture. So permanent agriculture, it's a way of mimicking these natural biological environments which are there and bringing it into our spaces. Now, permaculture was coined by Bill Mollison. He was an Australian in 1971. However, permaculture is not such a new concept. It has been practiced by our forefathers for many hundreds of years before. But now we need to revamp everything and get it out because everyone's forgotten the way. And so permaculture is out. But now we realize that permaculture is not about agriculture only. Permaculture is about everything, all life systems, schooling, building houses, schooling, education, that is, businesses and economics, community living. You can all have permaculture over there because as you see, permaculture is a culture and a life which is not only sustainable but regenerative. It replenishes resources rather than depleting them. So this is how I got hooked into permaculture, and then by the internet I started looking at things. So now we can see the I was very impressed with the food forest which they spoke about. So imitating real life forests and bringing it into your spaces, trying to grow food for yourself. So I went about thinking that we are going to set up a food forest. And so in 2016 monsoon, we have here the rice growing in the trenches and the papaya saplings, the banana saplings, everything, they're just growing together. So this is how it was. From 2016, then we go to, so this is the same thing about here. And now in 2016, I go to do a permaculture design course at Aranya Agricultural Institute in Telangana. So all this time I was in the sidelines, waiting and watching, just like in everything in life, even in yoga. First I will watch, I will do, only if it's okay with me, then I'll go and actively jump into it. So 2016, I did a permaculture design course. 2017, I went for the International Permaculture Convergence. 2017, I did a biodynamics course. All of these courses were more than a week long. I had to leave home, the kids, and it was an absolute fun learning process. It was a permaculture process.
And the husband.
Yeah, and the husband. I had to leave the husband too. So, but it was a permaculture learning process, and that's very impressive. Now, what is permaculture? So, it's a set of design principles which are centered on whole systems thinking. Now, what is a whole systems thinking? Whole systems thinking is a thinking approach which is a very broad-based approach and takes into account everything, the systems, the life cycles in it, all the tangible things that are associated with it, without just focusing on that one thing that you want to focus on. So permaculture is a set of design principles centered on whole systems thinking. It observes and mimics nature and creates sustainable, biodiverse, food-producing environments. Now, so why permaculture? Why, one may ask? You can do the same thing with organic gardening or farming or anything. You know, you just want to produce food after all. Now, as a planet, we see that we are constantly facing lots of crises, food crisis, water crisis, environmental, we are facing the biggest environmental crisis now, energy crisis, which is going to be an ongoing crisis. The energy crisis is never ending. So we are constantly facing these crises. And what we as human beings do is we turn to science and technology for a solution. Now, what we don't realize is that these are very short-term protracted solutions, right? Because science and technology are part of the problem itself. They are the reason many of these problems have come about. Now, if you look at it, nature has sustained Mother Earth for millions, no billions of years. Nature has made our planet richer, wealthier, healthier, right from the beginning till now. Whatever mankind does to nature, whatever we do, in spite of that, Mother Earth helps us. I mean, it's still a livable place for us. It doesn't let us go and say, okay, come on, you're not treating me well, I can't look after you. No. So nature definitely has some sort of intelligence, just like our bodies, just like we have cellular intelligence to know what to do to keep ourselves healthy and well. Similarly, Mother Earth and nature have some things within them. I think we should look at them for solutions, because there are these powerful biological processes which are actually governing the functioning of the planet. And if we look at that, if we look at, for example, in our talk today, we look at the forests which are there, and we learn from them, then maybe there's a permanent solution for us instead of going back and forth with all these crises. So how does permaculture work? Now, permaculture is basically, it consists of a core set of ethics, 3 ethics only, a very core set and very integral to anything permaculture. That is earth care, people or self-care, and fair share. In short, it says that if it is not good for the earth and not good for people with a fair share, then do not do it. So permaculture is strongly interlinked and weaved with these 3 core principles. And whatever we do in permaculture, in whatever field, whether it is education, whether it is in building houses, whether it is in businesses, whether it's agriculture, whatever business you're in, these 3 ethics cannot move. You need to keep asking yourself constantly, is this good for earth? Is this good for people? Is it fair? Is it fair for everybody involved? Sorry. So along with these 3 ethics, there are 12 principles which guide permaculture. A couple of them I'll just read out to you is observe and interact, store and catch energy, no waste, obtain and yield, small, slow solutions, apply self-regulation, very important, something we don't do. First mistake we do in any field is first we jump into whatever you want to do without observing, without learning, without seeing the lessons of people before us. We jump into something and then you just keep doing what you're doing without really taking a pause, reflecting, looking at what you've done, learning from there, taking criticism, taking feedback. So permaculture then, with these 3 core ethics and some 12 principles, it goes in. And there are certain techniques which I will show you in the following slides, but most important one is this is it same as organic gardening then? What is the difference between organic gardening or farming and permaculture? Now here in front of you are 2 pictures. They are the same size of land parcel. One is an organic garden and one is a permaculture homestead. The first and the basic difference that you can see is in the shape of the homes, the 2 places. The organic garden is a regular square or a rectangular patch of land which we have. Whereas the permaculture homestead, they have designed it. See, it's a design process. They designed it to become nice and circular. Now, this uses one of the principles in permaculture, which was edge, use edge. Now, what's an edge? What's an edge? An edge is basically a boundary or a junction between 2 places. You can have an edge between your between the door, between your house, inside of your house and outside of your house. There is an edge between the sea and the sand. There's an edge between the mountains and the valley. Everywhere there is an edge, and the edge is the place. The edge is the place which has the maximum life in it, biodiversity, because organisms which can survive inside and outside both can survive in that edge. So it has maximum biodiversity. And the reason why this permaculture homestead is made in a circular or a convoluted fashion, involuted fashion, is to increase the edge. So if you actually roughly see the, what's that thing called, circumference, so the perimeter of the rectangular patch and of this patch, then you will have more of a surface area in the permaculture. So it's pretty intelligent, working out on a very simple basis. So the first difference you can see is that. The second difference that you can see between an organic garden and farm is that you can see the produce, which is there right in the front, the yield. It's pretty monocropping, in the sense one sort of yield. Whereas if you see the permaculture farm, there's a variety of yields that you have, lots of it. Look at the trees behind. The trees are all of the same, like a plantation. Here, every tree is different, okay? there's a spade and the shovel over there, which indicates a lot of manual labor. Can we go into the next slide? Just enter it. So here I'd like to show you the differences, which says that an organic garden has a much higher yield but very few products. The products are less in number. Whereas in a permaculture homestead, you'll have a wide range of products which could include not just food, but habitat for people, for animals, recreation, and fuel. A lot of fuel, biofuel, and you see they're even capturing the wind energy, not just the solar energy behind. Then in organic gardening, pest control is closely monitored. We may not use chemicals, but we do use organic pesticides and organic fertilizers. Whereas in a permaculture, there is no concept of pest control, because they believe that you're harming someone else, right? Creatures of the earth are just like us. Everyone needs to live. So instead of a pest control, we do an integrated pest management. An organic garden will focus on annuals. What are annuals? Annuals are vegetables and crops, basically, which you need to farm and harvest every season. Versus perennials. Perennials are one which will last more than one season to multiple seasons. So all your fruit trees are perennials. Your curry patta, the curry leaves, is a perennial, whereas your dhania and the spinach and the coriander are annuals. So you get the difference. It's very simple. There's a lot of work involved here. If there are annuals, every season I have to keep digging, keep sowing, keep de-weeding. In a permaculture homestead, I don't do that, because I'm focusing more on things which will stay for 2, 3, 4 lifetime seasons. And obviously, permaculture homestead aims at weaning away from intensive labor. If you look at a forest model, where finally I just want to relax and rest. I'm not going to keep working hard to produce food. Yes, farmers do that day in and day out, but can I look at another system? Can I look at something in which my inputs initially, yes, will be more, but later on, as it establishes itself, can it be self-sustainable, sustainable on its own without my inputs? So that would be the difference between a permaculture and organic gardening or farming. Now let's come into some of the principles. This gentleman with that cap in the center is Narsanna Kopila. Narsanna sir is like after Dr. Venkat, who is the father of permaculture in India. He's the one who spearheads the movement. And in Telangana, they have built the Aranya Agricultural Institute over there. And most of us, 80% of us who practice permaculture, go and do our courses with him. He's a wonderful teacher. Now here we're having an open air classroom in which one of the principles is observe and interact. We're using that. You observe, because nature is never static. So like I told you, what we tend to do is once we buy a land parcel, we want to dive right into it and start building, growing, doing things. Whereas nature, if you watch, is never constant. It's constantly evolving. So the suggestion in permaculture is you wait for a season or two, wait for a year or two, and watch what nature is doing to your land. Watch how your land reacts to it, and then learn from there, and then go ahead. So that was observe and interact. Then we go on to pest management. As we said, integrated pest management. Here you're seeing a lot of sunflower crops over there. So now, how is sunflower involved in this pest management? There is a lot of multi-cropping here, but I'll talk about the pests. Sunflower has very nice bright yellow flowers, like most of the oil seeds like mustard and flax and many of them. And they are going to be the ones which attract not only beneficial insects, but they're going to deter the harmful insects from the main crop. So that will be the pest management. And then next, trenches and bunds. So no piece of land which you buy is ever going to be a flat piece of land. It's never going to be a flat piece. It always has some undulations, some slopes, some curves, and we use that to our advantage. So we use on contour swales or trenches, which are going to collect the rainwater, the soil, eroded soil which is coming down. And we also plant in those trenches. So here you can see a very wonderful system where I have planted within the trenches and I planted on the bunds. The bunds on the top, the trenches, that's the trench, that's right. That's the trench and that's the bund. Okay, and another principle is the guild. Now this is a very fledgling or a baby food forest that we have planted. A guild is a system like if you see in a forest, you don't see, as I mentioned, the same type of plantation. I don't see a mango or a cashew plantation in a forest. What I see is a dense network of lots of different types of trees and creepers and everything. So permaculture uses, nature uses every bit of space. It does not let space go waste. So if there is a big tree, say a fruit or a nut tree, under that tree there'll be a littler tree, and then under that on the ground there'll be a ground cover, and underground there'll be a root, and there'll be some climbers. All of this space is occupied. So particularly here, this is a guild. It's called a guild. You can see the guild. Please go back. Yeah, so the guild shows one of the main trees. That's the mango one, if you can see. This one over here, this is the mango plant, and which is surrounded by lemongrass, which will be a pest detractor. And I've planted some urad over there, urid, which is a nitrogen fixture and a legume, and it will give me food. There are marigolds. Can you just reduce the size, please? There are marigolds, which will again detract the pests. And in between the plants, instead of leaving space open, I've planted naturally. So this is a concept of a guild. No guild is perfect. We just keep trying to make it better and better, but it will give you an yield. Talking of yields, if I'm going to plant only fruit trees, I'm not going to get an yield for another 4, 5, 6 years maybe. So till then, what do? Do I just wait? No, all this space which is there in between the plants, I'm doing an interplanting. So I've interplanted, yes, urad over there. And how does it help me? So I'll be planting every season. Yes, I'm going to do an annual planting till my perennials take over, but I'll get food. The urad fixes the nitrogen, so it enhances the soil. It provides a ground cover, so it prevents evaporation and lets the microorganisms thrive over there. Plus, after I've harvested all the urad, all the biomass is going to go back into the soil in a form of in situ composting that we call. So it's going to enrich the soil again. So can you see this? This is called stacking. And that's what a guild or a food forest is all about. It's about stacking functions. One for many and many for one. Many functions done by one thing and one thing providing many functions. So that's a guild. Then we have this multi-cropping system which we spoke about. So if I'm having a main yield of say a cereal or a millet, which would be jawari in this case, then I'm planting the flax seed next to it, which is flax, which is oil seed. And next to it is the moong and 2 moongs, rows of moongs, which are both are going to give me food. One is going to deter pests, one is going to fix nitrogen. So in case my jawari fails, my main cereal crop fails, I still have something to eat. Unlike conventional farming, where you have whole fields of just tomatoes or just rice or just wheat or just bajri, where touch wood, if there is some heavy rainfall or some viral infection, the whole field vanishes. So this is what permaculture is all about multi-cropping. Again, the same issue where I have a multifunctional thing. There you can see the haldi, the turmeric growing underneath the mango trees. And another principle which talks about is zero waste, produce zero waste. So now permaculture says zero inputs from outside and zero outputs from inside going out. Nothing coming in from out, nothing going out from in. Initial stages, we had to bring in biomass. We bought in sugarcane bagasse and dried leaves, fallen little leaf, and we got in cow dung. That's all we got in. Now we are pretty self-sufficient except for the cow dung. Everything else is produced here, and all of this trimmings of the tree trunks and branches which have fallen down can again provide multiple functions. It's not a waste. It will provide fuel to the family who lives there. It can go into my raised beds, and it can be used as stakes for supporting my plants. So multiple functions again. Now we come into, this is a picture of 2017. We'll go through quickly. And that is Ansh walking through the rice fields on one side, mango on the other. And 2018 this is how it looks. Now this is my forest, which are what I like to think and imagine that I've grown a forest over here. Feel very happy looking at it. All the various trees which are there, growing very nicely, giving me a nice harvest, as you can see. And this is the picture which I've just put in just to show some life, like the big spider web which you can see over there. Now this is what I'm very fascinated with. Yes, the web over there, but the next picture is what I'm really fascinated with. This is a honeycomb. And for people who want to put up food forests, having a honeycomb is like one of the biggest blessings on earth. Because once the bees come in, they said they work very hard and they set in all the pollination business. It's a wonderful sign when you have the honeycomb, honeybee. Although we never get any honey out of it, trust me, but I'm very happy that the bees are there working hard.
Is it a certificate that everything is going well?
Nothing. This is just my idea and what I've heard from friends. That's my idea. And this is now in 2020. Okay. So now for some dramatic picture effects. Yeah. The view of the house in 2013 and in 2018. And the view from the house in 2014 and in 2020. I'd like to dramatize this. So look carefully, look at the picture on the top when we bought it till 2014, and now within 6 years, this is what permaculture has helped me create. So I would like to create a food forest which is self-sustainable, which utilizes natural resources and energy, which gives not only me a lot of food, but as I will show you, it gives food to other species. It builds up the biodiversity, and it lets me rest in peace, as we can see later. Okay. Tarun, can you show the producers?
Absolutely. So now we come to the food, and naturally, Punita has left this talk to me, and this is what she has spoken about, what you give to the forest, and I'm going to talk about what forest gives us. So you can see lovely bananas and papaya. I'm going to rush through these slides. These are tomatoes, and then we have cherry tomatoes and all sorts of vegetables. And you can see how much fresh and nice, and a giant size cucumber. It takes a hell of a time to finish this, and we have so much of it. This is known as kira.
And the best part is you don't need a refrigerator. It stays out for a week also, even after cut. So these are the natural, kira is part of the traditional native foods. It's not a hybrid food at all. Yeah.
And Peru and mangoes, different varieties of mangoes. And this is, fruits of passion, the passion fruit. What we used to eat in school, the jalebi, imli, the avlas and the mulberries and chikus. The best of the kaju, cashews, the white apple, the pineapple, the spices,
the roots,
the haldis and the ginger. And we were very surprised. We thought the pepper only grows in Coorg and Kerala, but if you provide a right microclimate,
that's right.
You can have that even in Dharwad. So this is all about creating the right climate so that anything can grow. Lemongrass and abundance. This is what the nature gives you back. You give your efforts to the nature. You be sincere in that, and this is the abundance. These are the magai palm leaves which are growing around the house, and what grows, what we eat there is what we grow. So it's straight from France, farm to the plate. So you say sarso, and what you see on sarso, these are the cherries, and then you have radish, and our own bajra karoti growing there. And all these products, straight from farm to the plate, and you must believe me that what taste you get is better than any other restaurant you would get in city of Bombay. So, Soma, what's the list? What products do you get back from the farm?
So I am very happy to say that whatever Tarun showed, we have not used anything from outside except for seeds in the beginning and cow dung manure, but besides that, nothing else. I may get less of a produce, but I'm abundant. I feel it's abundant. So all the lists which will keep popping up, I'm not going to read them out. You can just go ahead. Is what I'm self-sufficient in. I do not go to the market to buy any of these things now. Matter of fact, the papaya and the bananas, which have now reduced now as my forest is maturing, we don't like to buy from the market. And now I only go to the farmer's market to buy papayas and bananas because the taste is so different. So it's really, it may feel like, oh, what's the big deal? But if you go to see, it's really satisfying and sustaining to see that this I don't need to buy, and I'm growing all of this on my own. So that's it. And now I will go ahead to the flora and the fauna. This is just to say, we'll again quickly go through it. I showed you the farm in the beginning, and you saw that there was nothing except for one tree and grasslands, and now we have all of this growing here. We can just quickly go through it. So this is the biodiversity which you are building up. Go through it quickly. Yeah. I'm not going to name them. They're all labeled over there. The biodiversity which we are having over there. There are few pictures which we have got. There's much more, but it's okay. So this is a very interesting blue pea flower, which is just a weed. Mind you, it's just a weed and we've not planted it. It's just come on its own. And this is something of which we make wonderful tea, the blue pea tea, which we say.
Yeah, so it's full of antioxidant material, it's supposed to be. And the beauty of this tea is if you eat lime to this purple color tea, it becomes pink and completely changes.
That just changes the pH, I think. Yeah. And now the birds and the bees and the butterflies. So picture credits of the birds and the butterflies to Anuradha Wakar. And she has named them. So I don't know them, but she says it's the golden oriole. And then the next slide we have, next slide please. The green bee eater, the female koel, the Bharadwaj, the male koel, and the barn owl who visited us once but is not a resident. Sadly, the other birds are all residents now. Can you imagine from a farm which had not a single tree, not a single nest, one tree, not a single chirping in the morning? Today, when we wake up there, we are just, we are woken up by the birds. And this is butterfly season now. So look at the various butterflies, the blue mormon and the Dakkan common castor and the Dakkan short-banded castor. I don't know, so many of them.
So basically what it means is when you create a forest, things follow.
Things follow on their own.
If you create a farm, you are just left with a farm.
Absolutely, absolutely, you're right. And everything else follows. So there's abundance of everything. I'm providing food for this wildlife, and that's why they come there. I'm not using anything. That food is not, it's okay if I don't get a guava to eat and the birds come and eat them. It's all right. How much will I eat eating? So it's a way of, I know a farmer cannot use this principle, but I definitely can afford to say this, so I'd like to do it.
So for us, it has been a 7-year itch, from 2013 to 2020. It's been a complete revolution, not just for us, but for the birds and the butterflies also.
And the bees, yeah.
Absolutely. And what more things we get in return is fun.
So as I said that one of the byproducts of permaculture, it's not just food, it's habitat, it's recreation, and it's a lot of other things, relationships. So that's what Karan is going to show now.
And happiness. So
and happiness,
you can
the
see that
yes.
in pursuit of happiness, sleeping on a rice hay. It's just shown in Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol movies, but actually you can experience it here. And you can sleep under the stars. So full moon night, so tomorrow is a full moon night with no stars and a full starry night. Sleeping under the stars is something which you have to experience.
Everyone has to experience that once in a lifetime.
And when you sleep under the sky, you get to wake up to this. Okay, so you get up to wake up to a beautiful sunrise in the morning. You also have a choice to keep sleeping, and no one will disturb you, and completely relax. Many times when we go to the farm, all I do is just sleep because Punita feels I'm a sleep deprived person. But sleeping is an advantage, and you have early morning breakfast with papayas, and then watermelon, and then kada in the morning. So it's a dinacharya, swimming in the pond, swinging, taking photographs. I think Ansh used to be doing homeschooling, and he did a lot of his homework, when he came here on the farm. And what a place to do the homework. And for the people who are used to Mercedes and huge cars, this is Dr. Kiran Chheda. This is the BMW, and being carried by two lovely female. So this is what you can experience here. Work in the farm, enjoy the raindrops, play with her pets, and do yoga. So when you speak of Punita, yoga has to be there. So all sorts of asanas. We have a yoga studio where you can, stretch out. So there is fun making things. So we are making a wood-fired oven. And then this is Param using this wood-fired oven to make a pizza here. Corn on cob, and then just doing nothing. Actually, my idea of fun here is just doing nothing, being on hammock, sunset cycling, and then Chawana from Chembur with friends, and the massage. So the best massage you can get on the Katla here. It's softness from down and hardness from top, and going to the lake, boating on a full moon night, and the campfire. So life is fun. A few of the things which we've done here. Me and Punita were at the farm for 52 days during the lockdown, and the true meaning of life and true happiness we have experienced here.
So, a little apology for all my permaculture friends who are here, hoping they've come here hoping to learn something. But yes, I've introduced a lot of non-work pictures over here. But this is just to show that this is a byproduct of permaculture. You can rest and relax and have fun. And that's one of the things. So now I go into the farm. And yeah. So here, this is me creating rice saplings and Taral creating the field for SRI rice. This is the rice growing. But most important, what I want to talk about is in 3 years, since 2017, we've embarked on this project, which is the Rural Interactive Cultivation Experience. So Shishuvan is a school in Mumbai, and 4th graders from that school come to our farm. Since the last 3 years, they've been coming to experience paddy cultivation.
So I just want to mention this to Jasmeet and Shabnam, who are here, who are working with children who are special, that this our entire farm and the house is completely accessible. A person with wheelchair, walker, an amputee, anyone can visit, and everything on the farm, there are no stairs, and you can walk around and participate in anything, without any barriers. So that's what I wanted to mention.
So now, the first time I did this, you can look at the expressions. I'm going to hold on for the moment at this picture. I want you to check out the expressions on the children's faces. Apprehension, anxiety, boredom, maybe wondering what will come, not bothered. Some of them are even refusing to put their feet down because of the fear of all the creepy crawlies on the floor. This is how we start off, because an urban child today has really not experienced all of this. And these are our open, so we don't do just paddy plantation. There's a lot of other lateral talk happening over here. So here I'm showing them about seed diversity and seed saving. And then, so the first stage of rice plantation is de-weeding and sowing. And the children go out into the field and they de-weed the entire plot of land which they are going to sow. Very happily. They do the manual, so I make them do the manual labor. And then they sow the seeds and then create the buns. And look at them work, tiny hands. They're about 9, 10-year-old, I think, 4th standards. Yes. And so busily, happily, merrily doing these things. And then comes the next stage. They come after around 6 weeks, when this is the time they experience the plowing and how these animals, how they are the farmers' friends, how they help in plowing the land. How the soil changes from hard and tough to soft, cottony, and they play in the mud like this. So the various comments that you get, look at the expression, look at her smiling and dancing. They purposely fall down over here. It's not easy to walk over here. And they say it's a mud spa, literally a mud spa. And watch this now. This is transplanting the rice which they have sown. Look at the attention with detail, how they're concentration, they're removing, they're actually uprooting the saplings.
So this is much better than going to online schools, where kids are not really interested.
That's true, absolutely. And besides that, look here. So today's child, the one who's packed in a room with his computers or the phones or the books, very distracted child, not ready to sit and concentrate or focus. Look at the concentration and focus over here. They're literally enjoying it. Trust me, by the end of day 1, they don't want to go back. Now, this is the 6 weeks after, and after this, they come for harvesting, which is around post-Diwali time.
So Neha and all the teachers who are here, your teacher doesn't have to shout, please pay attention.
Absolutely. And then this is post-Diwali when they come for harvesting. They do attempt to harvest the rice. It's a very tough job, but they like to think that they have done. And so they carry back whatever they've harvested and go back into our, lorry baker room, where they do the threshing. And it's real fun for them, beating the rice, the paddy out of the plant. So this experience is not just about paddy plantation. Over three times in the year when they come here, they fall in love with this place. Now, if you look at this open classroom setting, there is so much of sensory inputs for them that their curiosity knows no bounds. There is a lot of learning which happens, and if you see in the next slide, which is a circle time, this is what Shishuvan is famous for, circle time at the end of any activity and project. They cannot initially they wouldn't talk, and here they can't stop talking. There are so many observations, so many questions, and this is such a beautiful place to sit under the tree and have a lovely circle time. Similarly here, different pictures of things that we talk about. And yeah, so I'd like to say one thing is that I feel personally after these experiences, every urban child should be made to experience some amount of nature, some amount of biodiversity, working hands-on, because it brings out a different element in them. Yeah, so do you want to take it?
So yeah, absolutely. So, you know, gratitude at the end, you know, before we complete this story, this is Tambekar family. The entire family lives on a farm and they've been part of our life. And thanks for, you know, converting this from a barren land to a forest.
Absolutely. So it is this family who has worked and not us. We are just the ones who come and, you know, visit them once in 2 weeks or once in a week, pay them their dues and go away.
Yeah, and this is Vijay, you know, person who helped us with building the house, purchasing the land, and he's our man Friday. You know, he's there for all the solutions. Mr. Gaikwad, the gardener who had a lot of resistance to all these ideas, you know, but ultimately, you know, he gave in, because when Punita is there, everyone has to give in. You know, you can't sort of you have to go her way, and then finally he gave in, and you know, you can see the results. This is Kiran, our driver, you know, who drove us around 3 hours going and coming back. There were times when I used to reach there at night, just sleep at night and leave back at Jupiter Hospital, reach again in the morning. But he did all the driving and a lot of suggestions from here. So all these people who were part of our journey. Punita, you want to talk about the permaculture group?
Yes, thanks, big thanks to my permaculture group, which is a constant support. We have WhatsApp groups, multiple of them. And every time we have a problem, we just put it up and you get Hajar solutions and people are ready to help out. It is such a nice group and it's such a permaculture way of living where you're constantly helping and not keeping to yourself. You know, it's not a reductionist way of living. It's a very holistic way of being. So thank you all of you.
And everybody who's inspired us, you know, Himanshu, Narsanna sir, you know, people from Vaikarna group, our college friends, school friends, everybody. And then I would want to end with photo finish, absolute silence. I'm just going to show some pictures. So people must be wondering, when Punita is putting all this hard work, what am I doing? I just sleep under the sky and I'm just watching at the sky. It's a different life for me. And, you know, she does the hard work, and what I do is go for walks and sleep. And this is what I do. Just enjoy these moments, the sunrise, the
dawn. This is dawn.
The views. The evening time.
This is dusk, I think, yeah.
Dusk. And this is what gives us happiness. It's a different meaning to life. And that's why we call this as In Pursuit of Happiness. So I hope, you know, this has been exactly 7:02. We've overshot time. Because journeys like take this little time, you know, you can't.
Yeah, you can't expect it.
So
it's so touching, inspiring, breathtaking. Like each and every picture speaks so much. Yeah, absolutely, so much to learn. I never knew. All this while, I think people talk so much about organic farming. I never knew about permaculture. Why is it like this? Like everyone knows about organic farming, whereas very few people know about this. Or
in few years, I think I don't know what permaculture do. These, you know, as I said, it's nothing new. Actually, our forefathers used to practice these techniques. It's just that after the Green Revolution, things got hidden, and now it's come up in a new avatar because it came from outside to India.
That's why.
And
yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you all the participants for, you know, patiently listening and enjoying this wonderful, it's absolutely wonderful, very touching. I'll just take 1 minute. I'll be running a poll, request each one of you to please share your thoughts, and post that you can start putting your questions in the question and answer box that is there. And we will, you know, Dr. Taral and Dr. Punita will probably we'll try answer all the questions that you have. Yeah, I'll just run the poll right now. Request you to please share your thoughts about it. Yeah, request people to please let us know your thoughts. Please share your feedback. It would be nice to know. I'll just wait for another 10 more seconds before I end the poll. Yeah, just 2 more seconds. Yeah. Okay. So I'm ending the poll. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much. So we'll open this forum for people to share the question and answer. I'm just going through the question and answer that's been there I will just share with them and probably you can answer it. Is that fine, Dr. Punita?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Purandari has asked, can we convert a rectangular plot in a circular border garden? Is that
absolutely possible? Absolutely. What's stopping you? Just need to change your boundary. That's all you need to do.
So if you really see, our plot of land was a rectangular land, and everything you can do inside can be circular, or better than circular is a wavy boundary.
Yeah.
So
it's
never have a straight road.
Undulated.
Never have a straight road. Have an undulated road, because that increases the edge and the surface.
Okay, nice. I think all these, even when I was seeing the living on the edge is such a beautiful thought, like everyone living in harmony, everyone coexisting together. Awesome thought. Yeah. Shivani Mittal wanted to know that, can permaculture be adopted in small urban space, balcony space? Even I was also thinking about this question. Is
absolutely.
it possible?
Absolutely. If you're thinking of growing food, yes, you start very small with pudina and dhania, and then chilies and tomatoes and curry patta, as I said. So you can grow pan, you can do a lot of these things. But permaculture, as I said, is not just about growing food. So every single small act you do in your home, the way you live. For example, in the kitchen, you spend nearly an hour or 2 hours in the morning in the kitchen, constantly washing hands, doing things, so much water going waste. Just take a tub. Yeah. Take a tub of water, dip your hands every time in that, rinse off your vessels in that, do everything in that. That's such a rich bowl of water. You're not wasting water, and all of this goes to your plant. So this is multiple functions. Fruits. I love eating oranges. This is an orange season now. You have orange peel. You can make a bioenzyme with that.
Zero waste.
Zero waste. So you compost all your waste, and this you make a bioenzyme. I've stopped buying phenyl, detergent, all that stuff. So these are small things which you can do. It's not going to drastically change your lifestyle, but it makes a whole lot of difference to the way you live and you impact the environment. But yes, food, definitely you can grow a lot of things, and there are newer systems which I don't look into, like vertical farming and aquaponics, which I really don't look into. Okay. It's all there.
So what I want to answer, Shivani, is that permaculture is not just about growing food. It's about the philosophy, and those were the 12 principles.
And the 3 ethics, mainly the 3 ethics.
So whenever you're doing those 3 ethics and 12 principles, it is basically living life, which is in harmony with nature, zero waste life. And automatically then it becomes permaculture principle.
Superb. Yeah, so we have Mr. Nikhil. His question is, our farmland is with lots of water logging, not allowing us to do farming of other varieties except rice. Do you have any solution to this through permaculture? Thank you so much. Is it?
Okay. So you need to look at what nature would do. When there is waterlogging in a farm, you need to see why there is waterlogging. When you go out in your area, wherever your farm is, if you look at the forest or at areas which are not touched by man. Is there water logging over there? Does it happen? Does the soil get absolutely compacted hard and does the water collect there? It doesn't. And you need to see why that's happening and why is the logging happening in your farm. So of course there will be ready-made solutions, but that is not what permaculture is all about. It's about you observing, interacting, and seeing what sort of practices I have done in the past to make my soil such that it just does not get the water to be absorbed down and it gets waterlogged. One more thing that I would like to share is just like in the city, we have cemented roads and that will not allow seepage of the rainwater in. And that's why our gutters overfill and we get flooded and all that stuff. But if you go to a farm or a village, the soil is soft, it's porous, and it lets the water seep right in and it recharges the groundwaters. You need to see why is that not happening in your place. And if it's a very high rainfall area, can you make such earthworks where you're letting the water out? So simple solutions maybe to bigger problems.
Yeah. So Mithali Sharma wanted to know, did you have white fungus snails on your farm and how did you manage it? I even saw someone like writing on the chat, are they snakes? And you know, like
yes, there are snakes. So when we speak about biodiversity, I'm sorry I didn't speak about with the birds and the bees. All these came, but with the food came the rats, and with the rats came the snakes and the mongoose, and with them came the birds of prey. So we do occasionally see a hawk flying and going by. That's what the owl is probably doing. But yes, there are many snakes. There are poisonous snakes. There are regular snakes, and it's very saddening to see that we need to educate and inform villagers and our caretakers and tell them about how to identify poisonous and non-poisonous so that you don't go around hurting every snake that you find. But yes, there is biodiversity and that's life.
So how do you manage, like how do you ensure like
no, you don't trouble the snake doesn't trouble you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the trouble we find is not with the snakes but with the rats actually, because they eat all the food. But
they eat all
the snakes, yeah, and so that's
yeah. Then Akshita Shetty wanted to know any resources we can know about permaculture.
Yeah, plenty. You can start with Google first. Google will get you everything, and then you get in touch with me. I can get you in touch with a lot of permaculture groups that are happening all around the country. Now we have permaculture courses also, which maybe first you need to Google and see if you're comfortable doing a little bit, and then if you want, you can dive deep in, because these courses are anywhere between 8 to 12 days. You're living on the field, very tough conditions. So I think you should always try it out first. But there's a lot of resources available, and I can always help you if you message me personally.
So, those who want to, have an experience of the farm, they can always come and experience. It's not required that they have to buy a farm. So if you have a friend's farm or somebody else's and they're not doing anything,
so that's
with small experimentations.
Yeah. That's the new way ahead. Community farms, as they say, and I think it's happening in Bombay too, a little away from Bombay also, where you sort of like a timeshare, I don't know what, something like that, where many people get together and buy a plot of land, and each one is allotted a specific area for themselves, and you can go on weekends and farm over there and then get the produce for yourself. So a lot of permutation combinations.
Punita, is like urban leaves.
Like urban leaves.
On a Sunday, instead of doing anything, people go to terraces of the school and then convert that terrace into a
So before diving in and purchasing land and so to say investing, try out your hand at these things yourselves. Try it at home, try it in these community farms, and see where it takes you.
So I call these dating the farming, meaning before marrying, please, dating is important, and then if you like, then you marry the farm.
So more and more people are now interested in growing clean food. There are a lot of such initiatives, and it's very heartening to see. Actually, if you go Parla, Villai Parla is a hotspot. If you see, lot of buildings have rooftop terrace gardens, lot of them. And now increasingly around this area, and you can grow amazing. Just go to urbanleaves.com and read up about their activities. There's so much they do.
Wow, awesome. I also saw a question, are there any books that people can buy, and they can you can just write down if there are any books that they can read. I saw one of the questions here. If there are any books that they can, catch up on permaculture.
There are a lot of books. I just take a list.
So
I'll share it just.
so what we'll do, Meena, is we'll make a resource list and hand over
Yes.
to you, and you can
And we
rate
will,
it.
yeah, we'll circulate it to all the attendees. Yeah. So
what courses are available, those who want to do at home, what they can do, and what books they can do.
And
We'll give you a
help
list.
groups are we involved with.
Yeah.
okay, help. Super. Yeah. So we have Amit Chatterjee asking, how much does it cost, the entire project, land, house, and the cultivation? How much time does it take? And I have no technical knowledge of agriculture.
Yeah. So we didn't have any technical knowledge of agriculture. You have to invest. So like any good project, you need to invest, and this investment in terms of your time and interest, and which is very, very important. It has to be given a priority. No one has time, but you have to allot time for it. And that is what, we had done. The land cost will differ from place to place. It of course, has some cost to, have a helping people, because you're not going to be stay at the farm all the time. But again, when you have a family or local helpers, you are actually helping
Supporting
them,
them,
supporting
yes.
them. So look at it not as an expense, but a support to the villager, and you're also giving them knowledge about the right farming practices. So look at it as an investment rather than cost, and then your entire scenario changes. What it gives you in return is amazing. So Meena, you understand about return on investment. The biggest
Yes.
return of investment is happiness, the content, and understanding the true meaning of life.
Satisfaction.
I want to say something.
Yes.
So, as I said about the cost, what are the cost factors? I can't give you numbers, but definitely yes, to own land, ownership of land, that costs money. But beyond that, permaculture is very flexible and lets you be within your limits. You take it bit by bit, phase by phase. But as you see, we have no fertilizers, chemical or non-chemical. We have no fertilizers, no pesticides, no weedicides. Matter of fact, the seeds also now we get more of native open pollinated seeds, which means you can save your seeds every year. From your produce, you save it and use it for the next year. Whereas versus for a farmer, it's very difficult because he has to go out every year and buy such expensive seeds. So it's the lifestyle which you're adopting, which if I'm just going for plain gardening and organic farming and want to grow food, it is an expensive affair. But yes, in terms of time, dedication, energy, money, you need to put in. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the messages we would like to give it, there are many times you cannot own a farm. You cannot practice sustainable farming. But what you can definitely do is support people who are doing it by buying their products.
Absolutely.
And that way indirectly, you get a share of the farm without actually owning the farm.
Buy local, be local. We want to eat dragon fruits and whatever other new fruits which have flown all those carbon miles and come over here. Why are we doing it? Why don't I just buy local from what the farmer, go to the farmer's market, invest, see that the farmer gets a fair share instead of the middleman getting a fair share. These are the ways in which one can
agree,
support and lead to a sustainable
contribute.
lifestyle. Yes.
Yes. Well said. Yeah, Shivangi Mittal, her question is, where to source desi open pollinated seeds?
Okay, so I think this is a question which I am not very good at, but every district I believe will have a seed bank. There are many such seed banks, and so what is a gram something?
Yeah, so every district has a place. You can Google it and you will know which actually stores native thing. There are NGOs, like at Mokhada near a place there is an NGO, Kodala there is an NGO, Nashik there is an NGO, which will supply you native seeds, native rice, native seeds. Narsanna, I know definitely, whenever we are in need of really native seeds of different varieties of millets, we get it from Narsanna. So it is possible to procure, the open pollinated seeds, but final destination is you should be able to produce and save it yourself and create your own seed bank.
So that you can always share with people what you have, don't have. So now our permaculture groups are such a big help over here. Anyone in having excess seeds will say, hey, come on, I go do this, I have excess. can be exchanged. Can we do a seed exchange? Or else some people don't want an exchange. They say, I'm giving you 1 kg of this rice variety. Next season or 2 or 3 seasons later, you give me back 5 kgs. So, you know, it's this barter system which happens over years and all of this. Yeah. So from all these groups, Shivani, yeah, you asked me the question, right? So this thing is, once you get into this system, you connect with people. This is community living. You don't work in isolation. You don't live in isolation. You work with the group in the community. You share, you barter. That's the way it happens.
So you don't buy it, but you exchange.
Nice thought. Dipali Parekh wanted to know any sources where we can buy this produce. I think even I also wanted to know.
So I think farmers markets do go and sell these things. I'm sure you'll get a lot of produce.
The one that is in Bandra, because I think it's
many places.
Many places.
Okay,
all of them are very ethical sources of people who are actually they're real farmers who are growing food ethically and they come and sell their produce. Or there are people who have tied up with farmers all over and they get their produce and sell them.
But nothing like making your own.
Making your own food. Nothing like it.
You know, building terraces, you know, building parking spaces. These are great places where this can be created.
Even that small box grill which we have outside our homes in Mumbai can be used for small pots. So you start small and you can go ahead from there. The joy of eating something which you have grown is tremendous.
Agree. There's a question, any website for farmers market? So we'll just have to Google farmers market and that will throw the links.
The one which is very common is the Bandra farmers market.
Yeah.
If they go to Facebook also, there are all these pages. I'm pretty sure they're open pages. I'm not sure. But
so we'll try to compile this. We'll try to compile and
what also we will do now, the questions, wherever certain information is required now. Dr. Taral, I'll just share the details with you and probably that can be compiled and we can send it to everyone and, you know, they can, like the answers, like the website, books, they can get the information from there. Yeah. Yeah. So Aparna Padgaonkar wanted to know what is the easiest to grow in the beginning?
So you start putting in your perennials. Perennials are the ones which are going to provide you food over seasons. You start growing fast growers like mulberry, drumstick, hadga, which is Sesbania grandiflora, and it's going to provide you food within 1 year. Things like mangoes are going to take a lot of time. Things like bananas and papayas will come in next in the second year, third year, you will start getting the produce. But of course, your vegetables, vegetable farming is very intensive. Let me tell you this. So if you see very few vegetables that I have because they are annuals. But you can start with your vegetables and your crops. But as far as perennials are concerned, you need to put in these things first. The drumstick, the moringa, that's the moringa, a lot of things, yeah.
So things which will grow easily, grow faster and provide mulch. Your soil better and provide you biomass.
And this thing differs from place to place. So you always need to go back and watch what's happening in the area around you, what grows easily, what grows well. Talk to people, talk to the farmers, to people of older generations, and they know much more. And that's how we learn.
You know, you understand this very well. You know, if someone invests at MFA,
yeah,
you will get return in 5 years. But people want to see some returns every year, every 6 months. So you can't wait for your mango tree to give you mangoes after 5 years. You will not have patience. So you have to grow along with something which will give you immediate returns on your investment, but at the same time make soil better for the mango tree.
Yes.
At the same time. So it's 2 in 1, multiple.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Amol Sonamne wanted to know about request if you could take such sessions for my school teachers and students. I work with Jindal Vidya Mandir school.
Where is the school?
Jindal Vidya Mandir. I think Vasai. I'm not because.
So we can do that. We have been working with few schools. So at present, at least, you know, we can have introductory classes. But I think once situation opens, it would be best that the school children come to the farm and work on site. Once it is
probably they can just write to us or write to you, and then probably you can just guide them as to where they can go. And I also wanted to tell Mr. Amol Sunamni that the recording we will be sharing with everyone, all the participants who have registered, and we can share with them. You all, you can go through the recordings, and I was just telling Taral in the afternoon that this is something which will never have an expiry date. This session is never going to have an expiry date because you can view it. It's always enriching, and there's so much to learn. And the pictures are so you get the peace, when you see them. There's so much of it just lights your face.
So one more, sort of a similarity between medical practice and farming is that whenever you have a doctor, they say he's still practicing. He's never perfect, still practicing.
Yeah.
Where are you practicing that? So similarly in farming, especially permaculture, you're always a student. You're always observing and interacting and taking actions. You never become master. You become master of surgery, but you never become master of farming because you're always learning, and that student in you keeps you alive.
Okay. Meena, I just want to interrupt here.
Nice.
I see Sunita was given some inputs on farmers markets.
Yeah.
Which are at Bandra and Jew have good farmers markets on Sunday. The Bandra one is at Bandra Hindu Association behind Nilgiri Garden off Linking Road. So Sunday mornings at 9 to 3 p.m. Just for those.
Puneet is also a farmer.
He's a permaculturist.
And he's been a
natural farmer.
Friend, and for a lot of our inputs, we ask him.
Yeah. I just wanted to check with you, Dr. Taral Puneeta. There are more questions, and we're already touching 7:26. What do we do? Like, should we? Hello?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, I can see more
So
questions.
We can take the questions offline and maybe on an email, and I could put the answers to all of them in one email so it gets circulated to everybody. That could be done.
Okay. So what we'll do, till 7:30. So I'll take few more questions till 7:30. So 4 more minutes, and then we can wind up. So
I see there are a lot of questions in the chat. Are these the questions?
Yeah. There's a lot of questions in the question and answer as well as on chat, which I think by 7:30 we'll not be able to finish all of them. So I'll just try taking few of them till 7:30, and post that. What we will do is that we will. I'll share this with you, and then you can get back to us with the answer, and then that can be sent to all the participants.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yeah.
So since I was busy doing all the talking while Sanal was there, I didn't get to read all the chat messages. Will they be available after the meeting?
Yeah.
We will share it with you. Everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Dr. Ram is asking, can we attend the camp? So you can camp into our side anytime. He's been a mentor to us for a lot of things. Parents.
He also coming.
Parents to how to go close to nature, and he's a trekker himself. So thanks, Dr. Ram Prabhu and Meena Prabhu, for inspiring us on this journey.
Yes.
So someone is Chitra here is written that the chat does not get saved.
So it will get saved. It comes on with record, it gets recorded.
Okay.
Yeah. So just one question by Shivangi. Does your entire team have Amrit Mitti, effect of Amrit Mitti on yield? Getting cow dung and cow urine from Amrit Jal is so difficult.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Does your entire team have Amrit Mitti, effects of Amrit Mitti on the yield? Getting cow dung and cow urine for Amrit Jal is so difficult.
Okay, who is this?
Shivani Mittal.
Shivani, if you noticed, I tried making Amrit Mitti in the beginning and I gave up the efforts within 3 months. I can't do Amrit Mitti in the farm. It's a very urban project. Okay? Because these are very limited spaces, small scale, where you can be on site regularly, keep mixing your. It's a huge effort to do it in the field. I know there are people who do it in the farm.
I remember I went with a bucket to Matunga, where they used to have cow outside
the
temple. Outside the temple, hoping that she would pee and collect the urine.
Yeah, we actually have to give these. There are these cows outside temples, and you give them a bottle and come, and they do collect the urine for you and give you. But it's very difficult to collect the cow dung. And so there are people who do this in the farm, but I feel it's very labor intensive. I would rather make my soil enriched by going deep in the soil by growing things with deep tap roots like radish and nutrient accumulators, and by growing things at the top like mulch and by putting back everything into the soil. So all of that will decompose and over time give you a rich soil rather than take so many things from outside and build your soil. I mean, I have a lot of biomass now. I can make Amrit Mitti now if I want to, but it's too time consuming.
So I want to say one more thing is that people who make Amrit Mitti, whatever money you give, they will never sell to others.
Yeah, it's a compost.
It is a compost, but there is so much labor gone into it that they will never, कुछ भी लेके जाओ लेकिन अमृत मिट्टी नहीं दूंगा.
It's not labor वैसा if you're doing it in home for home spaces and all. But when you're looking at a large acreage, then it's very difficult to make so much.
And for the amount of efforts, the final what mitti you get is awesome.
So the biomass required is so much. It's just too much. You do it on a terrace top or in your at home. That's amazing. Like composting. But I think that's what everyone who wants to live a sustainable life could start off with. It's so simple. Composting.
Yeah, that's something that can be done, Yeah. So we'll take the last question from Nikhil Khamkar. How did you attract so many beautiful birds and butterflies in your area?
You make food for them and shelter for them. That's all they need. And a safe place to stay.
Okay, I would say something that purpose was never that to get birds and butterflies. Our purpose was very simple. That we wanted a weekend home. The second purpose was to grow our own food, and we wanted to have a place which we always would be close to a water body. The purpose was not that it happened, and these are our observations. That it also happens.
But it happens when you give us, see, there is food, right? We are not killing off these pests. See, once you don't kill the pests, the birds come for them. Once the birds come, and then there are flowerings, and there is a multiple, when you have multi-cropping system, a lot of butterflies will come, a lot of bees will come. So that's how succession builds, basically. Yeah. And you will not get this in a chemical, definitely not in a chemical farm, but even an organic farm where we have strictly systems which are straight-laced. This is a closed loop system where closing of the energy leakage from anywhere. And it's a biodiverse. So we are building biodiversity.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. I think we'll end the session and we'll say a big thank you to all the participants who have been there. I can see the numbers like still touching 100. And thank you so much, Dr. Punita, Dr. Taral. Very enriching. I loved each and every slide, the pictures, and there's so much. And the Mother Nature is amazing. Like
we've not done justice to the talk at all.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely.
I could just, some concepts which I remembered, but thank you everyone, all the participants for coming here. And
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Meena, for giving us a space where we have not disagreed.
No, thank you to you and Dr. Punita.
That's something I'd like to say.
Yes.
That, a storyteller says stories because of the people who listen to his stories. And so I'm really grateful for all of you for having sat here and listened to us.
Yes.
That allows us.
Absolutely.
The audience gives me someone to talk to. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Meena, can you please read my chat?
Yeah. One second. I'm not able to check. I'm not able to see the chat. I'm not able to see the chat once. You can WhatsApp me, Ketan.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Meena. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.